Well, good morning, Blue Troopers, and welcome to another scintillating episode of Max's Models. And I actually already drank my coffee. Well, at least I won't be slurping through this episode. Well, first off, guys, thanks for pointing out I didn't pay attention yesterday. This is an Israeli M1 Sherman that Mr. Rain sent me, and I want to thank you again for that, Mike. I really do appreciate that. And then I was thinking about, as soon as you guys pointed that out, the first time I saw a model of an Israeli Sherman, my older brother had one on his shelf, and I was like, some unusual, markings on that Sherman. He explained it was Israeli, and that's kind of how, as a kid, I kind of first started learning about, what was going on in the Middle East. So I guess the Israeli Sherman sort of holds a special place in my heart because it's another example of how a model leads to real world education. And my older brother started explaining to me, why the Israelis had Shermans, and then I learned about the Yom Kippur and all that other Yom Kippur War and all that other stuff. I'm like, wow. And it all started with a model tank that got me to ask the question. Now, we're going back to the Klingon battle cruiser because I got a bunch of comments yesterday that made it clear that I didn't make it clear, and actually I'm still not clear on what precisely transpired, but there's two versions of the story. So let me rehash just a bit so we can get there. All right. 1966, probably in the summertime, before the new season of television shows starts, the guys at AMT see the trailers for the upcoming television show Star Trek. Hey, that'd be a cool thing to model. They hire an advertising firm in Arizona, which assigns Steve Poe to be the account agent. He goes over to the Desilu Studios, gets the rights. We all already talked about that deal. AMT gets the drawings, puts the Enterprise into production, and it's a hot seller. Then I wrote some dates down here to try and keep this straight. Now, I have to go off on a quick little excursion just to point out what you guys already know, but it's relevant to this. Television shows are usually written a pretty good distance ahead of when they're actually shot, which is a good distance ahead of when they're aired. So there's a long, you call it a logistics chain from concept until the actual air date. And part of it's they got to get props together and hire actors, all the stuff that goes into making a television show. And it's got to get through all the studio politics. So, the Enterprise is a hot seller in 66 to 67. AMT decides we need another model to go with it. So, they hire Matt Jeffries to design the Klingon ship. Design an adversary ship. Now, at one quick point, the Klingon battle cruiser was on the shelves almost a month before it appeared on broadcast TV. All right? That's kind of going to maybe be a factor in this. I'll let you decide. But okay, now let's go back to Matt Jeffries and his drawings of the Klingon battle cruiser. Or better yet, let's go a little further back to when AMT hires him to design a ship. Now there's two diverging theories on both the Klingon ship and the Romulan ship. So we're going to cover both of them from what I've been able to put together. I'm also going to put the links to the Memory Alpha fan site down there, and you can read that. And there's a lot of sources on the internet if you want to do your own research. And I know some of you guys are far more knowledgeable about this than I am. But let's talk about the two theories and how they play into the comments I made yesterday, which is why I showed that scene with Kirk leaning over, the little computer going, it's the same design, without ever saying what design. Okay, so we'll hold on to that. Let's go back. I do not know if the guys in Troy, Michigan at AMT had ever even heard of a Klingon, or if the Klingons had even been invented by the writers when they told Matt Jeffries to make an adversary ship, and I don't know if they said make a Klingon ship or make an adversary ship. That's still out in the ether. But there's two diverging theories. The first theory is that they told Matt Jeffries to make an adversary ship, and he knew the Klingons existed because he was in California whereas AMT guys are up in Troy, Michigan, very disconnected from what's going on in California. Also, remember, this is the pre-internet days, so. But he wrote Klingon on the paperwork, so he clearly knew he was making a Klingon ship. That doesn't mean the guys in Troy, Michigan knew it was a Klingon ship. Okay, to them it was just an alien battle cruiser. Perhaps they did know. But one theory is that they knew it was a Klingon ship early on, and AMT hired him in late '67 to design it, just before Thanksgiving of '67, with the intent of getting the model produced for the next year's Christmas rush, holiday rush, gift rush. And they knew that, you need about 8 months, a year lead time to get a model from concept to production normally. The patterns have to be cut and molds have to be made, all that. And that does not happen quickly. We've talked about that extensively on this channel. Well, anyway, so they in November of '67, Matt comes up with the drawings that clearly say Klingon battle cruiser, and it goes to studio execs. They say fine, and of course AMT says, well, we'll make the model for the studio model for you. Okay, everybody's happy. They get the molds cut and everything, and then in in '68, in early September of '68, it hits the shelves. All right. Now, remember, this is early September, 1968. Now, let's go back. In 1968 is also when they filmed the episodes Elaine of Troyes and the Enterprise incident, and there were others on, but these are the two that are relevant. Now, here's where, again, the studio situation kind of causes some confusion, possibly. They shot Elaine of Troyes first, and I would assume they thought it was going to air first. So when the writers make a follow-on episode a few months later, which is the Enterprise incident, they figure at this point the people have already seen the Klingon battle cruiser, they know what it is, so Kirk just has to say it's clearly the same design, and all the fans of the show can make the connection. Okay, but they aired out of order. So the Enterprise incident aired first. It becomes the first time the Klingon battle cruiser shows itself. So when Kirk goes, it's clearly the same design. Back when it was written, everybody thought the ship would already be known to the audience. Now, of course, people who built the model, because the model came out a month before it appeared on broadcast TV, knew what it was. But remember, we're talking the pre-internet days. It's very possible that a lot of audience members who just watch the show casually or just happen to stumble onto an episode or in other words, we're not familiar with the model. It's possible that a lot of fans went, when Kirk goes, it's clearly the same design, and like, the same design as what? Because I didn't catch any place where he actually identified it as Klingon. Now, that's a total side note. That was a point apparently people are like, what's the point you're trying to make? The point I'm trying to make is that if you didn't build models and weren't familiar with the kit, it's distinctly possible that because they switched the episodes and Kirk never identified it as the ship as Klingon, that you may not have known what he meant when he said it's clearly the same design. You may not have known it was a Klingon ship because it wouldn't be identified as a Klingon ship until just before Christmas, when it would appear in Elaine of Troyes. I clearly identified as a Klingon ship. And given how much screen time and clear identification it got during the Elaine of Troyes episode, it makes sense that they figured this is to make sure the audience knows whose it is. And I did confirm that the studio did try to give, in the third season, did try to give the Klingon ship a lot of exposure to help promote model sales. Now, so that, now talking about the different theories, actually everything I've just covered isn't particularly in debate, but the issue that seems to be kind of a debated issue, and I don't have any hardcore information, anything in print from the time that would clear this up, is that this first scenario I gave you essentially assumes that AMT knew it was going to be the Klingon battle cruiser from jump and designed the box accordingly. But there is a contravening theory that alters that timeline and says that what happened was the AMT just wanted an adversary ship. Matt Jeffries drew up the plans. AMT jumped on it, but AMT didn't know what a Klingon was and made the box art that just said alien battle cruiser, because they figured somebody looking at the thing on the shelf is just going to know it's Star Trek and it's alien, so they're not going to know, because AMT didn't know there was such a thing as Klingons. But then when they found out, oh look, it's going to be from this group called the Klingons, AMT's like, what's a Klingon? And they were like, well crap, we've already got the box art done, how are we going to put the word Klingon on there in a hurry? So fortunately, the boxes had not been printed yet. The artwork was done, but the box hadn't been printed, and somebody just came with the idea, look, we'll just move the artwork over and put Klingon down the side here and put it in a few other places, just type it in a few other places, and problem solved. You put it on the instruction sheet. And that's why it has just the banner down the side that says Klingon. Now, it's very possible that the truth lies somewhere in the middle, but I can't verify this. So, you know, doing my little investigative work and doing a little trying to fill in a few blanks, both of these are credible sources. So I think probably something along the lines of what I kind of mentioned earlier. AMT goes to Matt Jeffrey, says, design us an adversary ship. Okay, so he designs the battle cruiser. Jeffries, being closer to what's going on, knows what the Klingons are. Figures it's going to be a Klingon ship. Maybe he wanted it to be Klingon, so he kind of pushed it. So he puts that on the paperwork. AMT gets the technical drawings. They don't know what a Klingon is up in Troy, Michigan. It hasn't been on the television show. They're not in the writers' rooms. They have no idea. They just know, hey, here's our alien ship. They see the word Klingon. I'm like, okay, whatever a Klingon is, it says battle cruiser. That's all we need. You know, we're not going to put Klingon. No one knows what one is. So they make their box art for the alien battle cruiser, and then word comes down, oh, it's going to be in these 2 episodes, and it's going to be Klingon. Like, crap, now we do have to put the name on there, so let's just real quick put a panel on there, get it out just before the boxes are printed, so they're able to make the repair, and it goes out as a Klingon battle cruiser, hits the shelf a few weeks before the ship actually is seen and broadcast, which, by the way, was the Enterprise incident aired on September 27th. And the kit had just gotten out previously that month, so I'm not sure exactly when, because they would have been delivered at different times in different places. But apparently it all happened in September of 68, so I would have been 7 years old. But then, as I mentioned, the studio flipped the order they showed them in, so Kirk's talking about it's the same design without saying what the design is, because the writers all thought that Elaine of Troyes would have aired first. So, is that clear as mud? Because if you're not confused, you're not paying attention. I don't know exactly what the truth is. Maybe one of you guys out there knows someone who worked at the plant or worked in the writer's room or is familiar with it. But you have to remember communications in 1967, 1968. It wasn't like today where you just shot an email off to somebody. It's very possible that the guys at AMT said, hey, give us an adversary ship. And the guys who were writing the stuff already, hey, we've got these Klingons, I'd make a perfect ship for them. Matt Jeffries, judged by the fact that he put Klingon on it, I think he always intended it to be a Klingon ship, but the guys in Troy, Michigan may not have known that. So they're kind of working on 2 different levels. At the last second, the guys in Troy, Michigan are brought up to speed and they have to run off and change the boxes. So these 2 stories don't discount each other. It's just when you tell one story and tell the other, you get 2 different stories. And like I say, I think the truth falls in the middle somewhere. And also, since we're talking all things Star Trek today, again, which, by the way, I really enjoy doing the Star Trek stuff, and there's so much information out there, but every time I think I've got something nailed, I find another source, or one of you guys informs me of something, I'm like, well, I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Maximus McSmartimus. So the Romulan ship, a lot of you guys asked about the story on the Romulan ship, and it also has 2 stories. A guy named Hua Chang was a prop maker, but he was not part of the Union Guild. And apparently he made the first, I guess it was roughly 2.5 foot wide Romulan ship. And again, I'll put the Memory Alpha link below. Now here's the thing about Washang that was important. Because he was not part of the guild, apparently they had to find a way to backdoor using his prop. They got caught. They did have a Union prop house apparently make a vacuform copy that was lighted and everything, and that's the one that appears on screen, not the wooden pattern. And I'm calling it a pattern. Wachang, they said he made the model, but if they vacuformed it, then I'm assuming it's classified as a pattern, but maybe it was supposed to appear on camera. Of course, that came out, I believe it was in Balance of Terror, was the first time that it was seen, which, if I'm not mistaken, is also when they introduced Mark Leonard playing a Romulan. But again, another rabbit hole. So back to the models. So there's, again, 2 stories on Washang. One is that is that his model wound up in a private collection that's still there today. And the other is that part of his deal with the Union, to not get in trouble with him since he wasn't a Union member, but to keep everybody in trouble, was they gave him the thing back and didn't pay him. And apparently he was so irate that he destroyed it. I'll let you read the Memory Alpha page, but I have no idea what the truth is. All I know is it's a big Star Trek mystery whether the original model still exists or not. And Wachang passed away, I think, in about 2003. So unless that thing pops up, it's probably lost to history. My one minor concern is that, given the skills of people, I don't know if you guys remember an old British TV show with Ian McShane called Lovejoy, where he was he was an art expert, but kind of in the shady, underworld of the art world. And he's what they called a divvy. He sort of instinctively knew if something was authentic or not. And he was often pulling cons, and they would make, really, on occasion, they would, for whatever reason, they would make these magnificent, fraudulent replicas and try to sell them as originals. But the idea is that some skilled model maker out there might see opportunity and try to cut an identical copy of the Romulan ship, use the old materials, and try to sell it as the real studio model. So if somebody, what I'm getting at is, I went all there just to go here. If at some point somebody says, oh, the original Romulan ship from the original Star Trek resurfaced, the studio model, and here it is, I would be extremely leery about that. And so, I mean, if it's some billionaire collector who has all kinds of exotica, maybe, but or maybe it's just in somebody's basement. For all we know, somebody may have got their hands on it, put it in their basement, forgot about it, passed away, whatever, and it's sitting there with a bunch of dirty laundry piled on top of it, broken into 3 pieces. And I'm like, God, I'm depressing myself. I'd rather think that the artist destroyed it than it ended up like that. Why am I rambling? Well, guys, I think that means I officially ran out of things to say. Hopefully I'll get the GB decal today. I've got it right here. And you cannot pick this thing up by the tail because it's got so much of a teardrop on it. You have to pick it up like this. Hopefully I will get this decal today and maybe get the little sprue struts, melt some sprue and get the struts on it and finish that up. But, this airplane, it literally just scares, as a pilot, it just scares me to look at. I'd be terrified if I had to fly something like this. So my hat's off to guys like Jimmy Doolittle and Delmar Benjamin who, actually managed to tame the beast. Well, guys, that's it for today. We'll talk to you later. Model on.